When I arrived in Hamilton this week, it was awfully chilly, so I ran and grabbed myself a quick piece of Cuddle fabric and made myself this awesome super long scarf. I can't wait to show you how. I literally have been making these 60-inch long scarves for years, and they make a great gift and they're incredibly affordable, but they are a little bit short if you really want to wrap them. So in comparison to today's project, look at the difference. So this is what 60 inches makes, right? And today we're going to use almost an entire 120, but I'm going to show you how to join them up so they have great flow. Now, again, with the 60-inch wide goods that you're using, I want you to get 3/4 of a yard. That's a perfect 27. But if you look down here at my cutting surface, you'll see that both edges of that 27 inches are really, really clean and cut nicely, because I'm just going to split this right up the middle. Now, there's a trick I can show you right here, because a lot of us don't have rulers that are that big or mats that are often that large. So what I like to do, if I'm in that situation, of course, always having the bigger tool or your ladder in the right spot before you climb it is always wise. But let's say you don't. I want to share with you here. You can see my cloth tape. I've pulled half of 27 is 13.5, right? So I'm going to come over here to 13.5 inches, not 12.5 inches like I almost did, right? So this here is going to be the line I want to cut. Then I'm going to slide my ruler down 1 notch so I have a good inch line that's running across that fold. Everything's really squared up to that fold. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and take my rotary cutter, because I'm going to stitch these edges together so I want it really clean later on. And I'm going to begin cutting. And of course I'm going to stop because I want that cloth tape to be 60 inches tomorrow too. You can see this is starting to come across there, right? And then I just continue on, stop before I come off of my mat. And then if I need to readjust, I can just take this and slide this down with both hands. Like that, yay there, okay? And then I can take, and the other is I want to use as much of my ruler along the cut that I've already made, okay? And if you have worked with any of these kinds of cuddles or minkies or anything in the past, you'll also know, because of the wonderful soft texture, they have a pile or a fiber to them that's going to make a bit of a mess when you cut it. So the next step I usually do right after I cut is I take a fresh lint roller and I come through here and I lint roll the edges, because that just helps me keep my studio clean and keeps a little bit of the mess down. Or a shop vac or those little micro vacuums are great for this too. But this just helps keep some of the fiber out of the way, right? And then once that is all done, we're going to join these on the bias. If you're a quilt maker, just like you would do your binding, so you're going to take one piece, and these are going to be joined right sides together. So let's put our dots up this way here. And to get a mitered seam, I need to have these running perpendicular, meaning side to side. So I'm going to put my other piece here like this. Now, normally we would just eyeball and stitch a line across here, but let me show you what I've done on a piece that I've already completed. So the big trick to getting this really accurate for that nice miter is, one, I'm using lots of pins. I'm probably using more pins in today's demonstration than I've used in all of the other tutorials combined, as a matter of fact. I've used 6 of them. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 to secure it. And then I'm also going to make a really nice straight line with my micro Sharpie. If you're using really light colored fabrics, maybe chalk is better, but with the black on the other side, I'm perfect to do this. I Sharpie it real nice, and then that way when I go to my sewing machine, I'm going to be able to go ahead and stitch straight along that line very nicely, and I've already done that, so I can literally now pull my pins out. Okay, now we do need to trim our excess out of the way. I'm going to use my rotary cutter and ruler for that. In quilting, you usually give yourself about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Here, I'm going to give myself about a 3/8 seam allowance, maybe a little bit larger. I want a little bit more meat in there over time. These are also washable projects, okay? I'm going to take the little extra triangles off because I just want it as easy and smooth as possible in there. And now we're totally prepped out. Except for, if you know me, I'm going to make a tube, and so I have a tube turning trick also. So here we're going to build this out, and on one end, I have already secured a safety pin and a piece of twine or rope or anything that as I begin to lay this thing together, right sides together, this is going to get stitched in so that it's my pull cord that I can turn it right sides back out. So we're going to go ahead and just blast through this real careful. Okay, we've got a long distance to sew, and I've put a nice edge guide on my machine, and it's also positioned at about 3/8. I've got some polyester thread in today, and I check it out. Like, let's say it's moving around too much for you. Let's say you're feeling like it's slipping around. Hey, there is nothing wrong with taking some of those pins. We already know how to use them. We use 6 today, right? You could put one every few inches if you've not worked with this stuff before. It's no problem, right? You could do that. Just don't sew over the pins. It's really not good for your sewing machine. Okay, I'm going to just adjust that edge guide a little bit further over, just how I like it. We're going to backstitch at the beginning. We want that secure because we will turn that up underneath. And now I can go into caffeinated mode. I'm going to watch out for that string inside. I don't want to stitch that. I just want it there. And I'll see you at the other end. Hey, real quick, let me zap out of caffeination mode here. I didn't point out earlier, but I did open my seams on that mitered corner. You can probably see them as I'm approaching the machine here. So instead of folding them to one side, I've opened them up to make it super flat and easy as I go through. That's just to eliminate the bulk. Okay, time for another caffeination. Here we go. All right, the caffeine's starting to wear off. I'm going to back stitch at the end. And what you're looking at here is that 120 inches-ish of tube all stitched together right sides. But remember, I've got that cord hanging out the bottom end. So now what I can start to do is just pull slowly. I kind of like to wad it up at the end where the safety pin's at. Don't tug too hard on the safety pin unless it's really secure. Now this thing is so wide that it should turn inside pretty quick and easy for me. Like that, but I do like to give it a little start on the end. Okay, and then I'm just kind of sliding it. Like this, here we come. And then once I've got my hand over here, instead of pulling the cord, I'm pulling the fabric, and it pops out just like that. So super easy, right? Okay, we just have a few last steps to do, and I can show you really just on one end. So what we'll do is we'll take off the safety pin. We're going to do the finishing now. So if you were interested in putting any kind of trim, let's talk about a couple of quick options. So first of all, you could stitch in some rickrack, some ball fringe, some wonderful eyelash yarns, anything like that can be stuck right in here. Technically, this is a finished edge, so you could really put what you wanted in there and stitch it over. I wanted mine to be a masculine scarf, so I didn't put pink trim or anything like that out of the bottom. One of the other things you can do is you can do a stitch line across here, which is really cool, and you can scissor cut your own trim into your scarves. That's why we leave them really long at first. So there's a lot of options. Here's the easiest though. We're simply going to take and we're going to roll this inside about 2 inches. Okay, and as I'm doing this, I want to point out, it's going to be really hard for you to see on the camera, but right here is that seam. So what I'm doing is I'm positioning my seam so that it will be technically centered on what I will wear as the back of the scarf. So right here, I don't know if you can see it, but I can feel it. My seam is right here, and I'm making sure everything is nice and flat and tidy. I'm gonna go back to my machine. Again, I have about 1 inch, maybe 1.5 inches worth of fabric up in there. I like it because it kind of feels like it adds a little bit of extra bulk for me. Back at the sewing machine, I'm gonna stitch the bottom piece first, up against that same edge guide. Lock in my stitching. Sometimes you might need to give a little encouragement. There's lots of thickness layers there. Don't push too hard, you could lose a needle over that. And then as I come to the end, again, back stitch. And then what I also like to do is I like to do one up maybe another inch, just for character. So I'm just gonna come up 1 more inch. And what I'm really doing is I can feel where the bulk has been turned under, and I'm catching the top of that bulk actually. And I'm gonna give it a little more encouragement, and here we go. back stitch. And that end is all done. You have one more end to do on your side, but it is time to snuggle up, put that awesome scarf to use, get outside in the cold weather and do something awesome. And I want to hear all about it in the comments below. What do you like to do outside in the winter when you're all bundled up? And while you're thinking of that, I'm going to get back in my studio where it's toasty warm and make some new great stuff for you here at Man Sewing.